So with our newfound redstone power, today we are making machines. Whether it's creating ice from sticks or grinding down metals into dust, we've got you covered on this episode of SkyFactory 4. Hey everybody, my name is Luke and welcome back for another episode of SkyFactory 4 on Channel Endgame. So in the last episode of this series, we sort of left off having created this simple geothermal generator, which is powered by lava. And I just wanted to touch on a couple of things from this before we kick on with the next bits for today. So this generator now has been running for a little while, getting sort of fed lava into it from these tanks and the droppers that we set up last episode. And this power generator is now full. So you can see when you right click on it, you can actually see that the fluid tank is now full up to its maximum capacity of 8,000 millibuckets of lava. There is in fact a fuel buffer as well, which is filling up. And the energy that we've got stored is actually at maximum. Despite the fact that you can see that the number understored is slightly under that of capacity, it's still as far as it's going to go. So that's, for all intents and purposes, full. So that's really, really cool. Now, the cool thing as well is that if we were to break that block, that generator block, and pick it up and then replace it, it actually retains all of its liquid and all of its power. So we can move it around if we need to start repositioning power and that kind of thing. But we shouldn't need to do that this episode because I'm going to actually set up some wireless power transfer, which will mean that the location of it is actually not that important. So now, the other thing is that as per last episode, this machine, when it was actually firing up and still pumping lava through, like all these droppers were dropping cobblestone and creating lava and pumping it through these pipes, it was making a lot of noise. So the clicking was incessant and it was really freaking annoying. So you'll see, actually, just to do a demonstration, if I was to remove this generator and actually replace it with this fresh geothermal generator that I've got in my hotbar here, you'll see it start up and that clicking noise will begin again. So I'm just going to pick that one up and I'll drop this fresh one down, which doesn't have any power in it yet. And you'll see that starting to fill up with the lava and that's going to start to generate the power. As it's doing that, you'll hear that clicking noise start again as soon as these all fire up. So it might take a second for the buffer to flow through, but that should start up pretty soon. Now, the main reason that was happening is because the droppers were firing at a rate that was not correct for the machine. So it was actually dumping cobblestone really, really quickly into those cauldrons. And then it was sort of, coming through at a rate that we weren't really ready for. So you can mess with that by actually changing the rate on these fluid extraction cables. So you can actually change the amount of lava that sort of comes through to the rest of the machine. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it, of course, is to actually change the redstone clock. So you can actually go back around to the clock and change the duration and the delay. But probably the more effective way to do it is actually with redstone. So I've actually set up this really, really basic redstone circuit here, which, there we go. Yeah, you can hear the clicking again now that it's caught up. So now this is actually set up so that these redstone comparators will actually sense when the cauldrons are filling up, and when they are full, they'll send a redstone signal through to this block, which has a simple switch on the other side, and that'll turn off the redstone clock. So basically, if the cauldron's full, the clock shouldn't fire and it shouldn't drop more cobblestone down via the dropper, and then we won't have that annoying clicking sound when the cauldron is full and it's already pumping lava through. So the droppers should only drop cobblestone when they need to fill the cauldrons. Otherwise, we should be fine. So now I haven't gotten entirely perfect yet. It does involve a fair bit of mucking around and tweaking with the timing of all those different devices, but it should at the very least be a fair bit more effective than it was previously. So the only other downside is that these sort of two sections of cauldrons are sharing the same circuit at the moment. So I'm going to have to separate them a little bit later so that they're firing independently. But look, at the end of the day, we're going to actually probably want multiple generators. So I'm going to chuck both of them down separately at the moment and just let them both fill up. I don't think there's any harm in that. I think I might actually just break that fluid cable in the middle too, so that we've got them sort of connected independently. That'll give us heaps of power, certainly more than we're going to need today at the very least. But as far as the noise goes, we can actually do something about that. So there is something in SkyFactory 4 called a sound muffler. So if we go to our storage remote and access our crafting table and have a look on JEI, So doing a search for muffler will reveal that there's actually a little super sound muffler block which we can create, which allows us to blacklist certain sounds, and then we as a player won't hear them. And you can upgrade that muffler to actually hang on a cable and convert it into a bauble so you can wear the thing. So let's actually craft that now. So super sound muffler, pretty straightforward. We just need some wool and a note block. So let's just make a note block. That's planks and a bit of redstone. So I think we've got everything to make that. Yep, fantastic. And then we should be able to make a muffler. Do we have any wool? We might need to just quickly craft some wool. So white wool, yeah, we can do that with a few strings. Let's just make some wool, chuck that in, and there we go. There's the super sound muffler. And why don't we just upgrade that right now? Yeah, we'll upgrade that right now with some extra string, just to make the bauble version. So yeah, let's just get rid of those and make that. Yep, there we go. So there is the super sound muffler. All right, fantastic. So this thing we can actually just wear as per one of our baubles. So we'll just chuck that on now. Although I think we actually need to set it first. So let's just go back in, grab that, chuck it in our hand, and accessing the menu on the super sound muffler. Now, if there has been sounds playing recently, they'll actually appear here and you can select them and add them to the blacklist. So I think that clicking has actually stopped for now. Let's see if we can fire that again. So our generators might actually be full. That's probably why. Yeah, they've actually completely filled up. So I wonder if I put an extra fluid cable in, that might just trick it for a moment into thinking that it actually has to travel a bit further down that pipe. So maybe we'll be able to get away with it that way. So if I put that down there, just extend the fluid cable for 1 second. Is that going to fire? Is that going to give us the clicking noise? Actually, it's interesting to note as well that one of the ways that I had to set up these fluid extraction cables involved me putting down this extraction cable here in this inset corner area. Now, when you do that, it actually has the extraction point, that little white point there, pointing at both of these cauldrons. In order to actually remove one of those connections and have it just connecting to one cauldron, which you can see there, see that little yellow spot just on the inside of that cable? Now, if you get a redstone torch and click on a side of the cable, you can actually sort of block off a side of the cable with that redstone torch. It's used almost like a spanner in a way. And you can make the cable go in the direction that you want it to go in that manner. So, all right, none of those clicking sounds are showing up just yet. So, don't know if we're going to be able to simulate that at the moment. Maybe... Actually, if we just remove that that redstone function and put it as always on, that'll probably start firing up again. Yeah, there we go. There's that clicking noise. Okay, so now if we go to the muffler, we should actually have that sound appear. I don't know why it's not appearing. Oh no, here we go. So if we hit on add, we can actually see a whole bunch of different sounds. So we can probably go for search for clock or click. Sometimes you have to just experiment a little bit with what you've been hearing and work out which one it is. But if you're not sure, you can actually search through the list manually and select basically whatever you want. So you can see there's the wind sounds, there's typing, there's tock sounds from the clocks. I think if we look for mob sounds, I think you've got all the different mobs listed here as well. So we can actually cut out the sounds of the pigs if we're going to be working in our resource hog area quite a bit. Our cows, if we're sick of hearing the cows moo, you can get rid of all that stuff. So let's say, for example, if we search for cow, so maybe you've got something against the sound of a cow dying. So that pained moo when you slice through its last bit of health with the sword. So if I wanted to remove that and actually muffle that sound, I could go to Minecraft Entity Cow Death, and I could add that to my blacklist. And now I will not hear that sound anymore as long as I'm actually wearing that muffler. So yeah, that's basically how it works. It's pretty straightforward. Now today, I actually want to get started on crafting a whole bunch of handy machines. So now that we've got redstone flux power to muck around with, there's a bunch of things that have opened up for us, and we can now start playing with some pretty fun machines, which are going to allow us to progress even further with some of our tech in SkyFactory 4. So I am going to start building some of these machines. Do we want to build them here? I'll save that for some of the other tech. I think we can probably just put it all on our main manufacturing platform at the moment. We've still got plenty of room over here, so we can build some of the machines here. And some of them are going to involve taking some of the resources that we've been smelting and putting those through them as well. So now, first up, I actually want to create a manufactory. Now, the reason why I want to do that is because a number of the mud buckets that we want to create to make different types of resource hogs, particularly the metal ones, actually require us to get the dust version of the metal, and you can actually get that with a manufactory. So if we go to our storage remote and do a search for manufactory, this is the one here. So this is actually part of the Nuclear Craft update, Nuclear Craft mob I should say, which is one we haven't messed with yet. Most of the material that it requires is pretty straightforward. We do need some lead ingots, so we're going to have to melt down some lead. And we do have one weird thing that we haven't seen before, which is this copper solenoid. Now, fortunately, this thing's pretty easy to make. It's just iron ingots and copper ingots, so I think we've got everything we need for that now. If not, we'll melt up a bit of iron and copper. So we need lead and we need copper. So what do we got going on here? We've got a bit of iron, which for whatever reason is not pouring. Oh, it just makes me get to that. And here we don't have anything, so we can actually make our lead there, I think. So let's craft some lead amber, and we can get going with that. So actually, searching for lead's probably even quicker, isn't it? So lead amber, there we go, and we can make a bunch of that. Where are we? Lead amber, yep. Okay, so just start with maybe a few of those. 9 should be enough. And we'll pop those into the chest, which will feed down through into here. We'll need to pour the ingots manually though, or just put a couple of redstone clocks down, I guess, or just move these ones. That'll probably serve our purpose right now, actually. So I'm just going to break these clocks and then reposition them on the other side, so that they'll actually start ticking on our ingots instead. So now where does this need to be? Just against the hopper rather. Okay, so delay we want to set on that about 1/85. That sounds good. So drop that right back down, and yep, sounds good. So there we go. We're pouring ingots of that material, and in fact, I might just move this one as well so that we can clear the other side out of all of our iron, just to make things a little easier. So write that down again. Only need duration 1. We don't need that to stay on forever. All right, there we go. So that should start pouring some iron for us in a second. Yep, there we go. All right, cool. So we've got lead ingots coming through. That's going to tick up quite quickly. So I don't think that those lead ambers are going to last long. So we'll stitch that up with our copper amber now as well, because that's the next thing we're going to want. So copper amber, that's the one. Let's make a bunch of that. Only 3? Yeah, 4. Chuck that in there, and that'll feed through, and that'll actually start making copper ingots for us after we've done that. Alright, so Manufactory, that is next on the list. Now, after the Manufactory, I think we're going to take a look at the Hydrator and the Solidifier, because there's a few bits and pieces we're going to need to make with those. So, let's actually have a look at the recipe for those just while we're waiting. So, starting with the Dehydrator. Now, the Dehydrator is basically the same sort of function that our drying racks have been doing for us, but in a machine form. So instead of having to place individual materials on those drying racks and waiting for them to dry out, we can just put a whole bunch of stuff in a Dehydrator, and it works very similar to a furnace. So we can actually rip through a bunch of materials in one go like that. So, and as it turns out, the Dehydrator is actually part of one of our advancement tasks as well. So if we go to the Age of Power, I believe it is, here we go. One of the advancements is I'll dehydrate you. So craft a Cyclic Dehydrator machine to automate recipes from the drying rack. So it's definitely on our list of things to do. So if we do a search for Cyclic, we will find it pretty quickly, although it is a very big pack, so maybe we'll need to be a bit more specific. Oh no, there we go. There's Cyclic Dehydrator. That's the one. So for this one, we only need redstone, a block of iron, clay, and some wood. So we've got everything we need for that already. So there we go. We have got the Dehydrator. So plonk this thing down here, I think. And it looks like a big oven, really. It looks like one of those things that you might see at a 7-Eleven or a service station that has those really dodgy looking sausages in it. So yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. So you put a bunch of stuff in there. It does need redstone flux power though, so we're going to hook it up to a power source in just a minute. You put your drying materials there, and it will dry it out real quick. And I think we can actually upgrade this thing as well later on. So yeah, that's the dehydrator. Now let's grab our copper ingots, and we'll make the Manufactory. So again, let's just do a quick search for that. Manufactory. And we need our copper solenoid, which we will create now. And I think that means that we just need to create a piston. So there we go. Actually, create a few of those, and then they'll come in handy. And there we go, Manufactory. Pretty easy indeed. Get rid of the stuff we don't need. All right, so let's plonk our Manufactory down right next to that dehydrator. Now the Manufactory actually again needs redstone flux power. So once we've got that getting power, we can start to throw some stuff in and manufacture it. And there's a couple of upgrades that we can put in there later as well. So as far as machines go, the next one on the list is the Hydrator. One of the things that we're going to be able to get out of the Hydrator is wet sponge. So that's going to come in handy too. So let's do a hunt for that. Let's do a hunt for Hydrator. There we go. That is the Hydrator, also part of the Cyclic mod. So for this one, we need a dropper, we need clay, blocks of iron, and we need some buckets full of water. So I think, what are we missing there? We're just missing the Terracotta. Okay, Terracotta. We actually need to bake some clay into Terracotta. So we can do that using our regular old furnace. So grab some clay. Let's just do a hunt for clay and get a bunch of it. So you never know when we're going to need more terracotta, so it always helps just to get a few of the resources done at once. Just save ourselves some trouble later on. Actually, why don't we just make a whole bunch of fresh clay? We've got the resin for it. So let's do that. Let's punch it into the furnace, and we'll come back and check on that shortly, and basically grab some of that terracotta. In the meantime, I think we can wire these machines up. So the method of wiring up mechanisms for remote power is exactly the same as what we've been doing with the item transfer nodes. We just do it with a power transfer node. So we actually need to craft a power transfer node or two, given that we've got two power generators now. I'm just going to do one today because we can do a second one at any time later. So again, if we just search for node, we've got the energy transfer node here. Now this one actually requires some nether bricks. Iron bars, which I think we've got, redstone comparators, which I've just crafted a bunch of recently, and blocks of redstone. So I think it's just the nether brick that we're going to have to actually make. So nether brick, nether rack in the furnace. That's pretty easy for us to do. So we can grab some nether rack from our stores. Where are we? Netherrack, or we can make a whole bunch more if we're out, because I think we used most of it to create that blaze recently. Yep, alright, let's make some more netherrack. So we are going to use our acorns and resin recipe. So there we go, there's plenty. And I think we'll convert 32 of those into nether brick. So we'll just chuck that in our other furnace to work on while we're doing that. Alright, so here's our terracotta. Let's head back down and make our hydrator. So, hydrator. There we go. We've got all the materials for that now. That is our hydrator. We will chuck that down next to the dehydrator. Now, the hydrator, I think this one's actually a little different in that we need to have water feeding into it as well. So, now as it happens, we do have a water supply there. We've got one over here too. I might move all of these machines actually, just to put our hydrator closer to the water supply and make use of some of that space that we've got over the other side. So, alright, hydrator, and over here we'll have the dehydrator and we'll have the Manufactory. Pretty easy. Okay, so to feed water into the hydrator, you can do it manually with buckets, which of course, generally speaking, is the fool's way of doing it. But we can put a little bit in there to get started at least, so we've actually filled that up with 2,000 mil buckets. But what we ideally want to do is have, water pumping into the hydrator directly from the water source here. We do have an infinite water source, so we can sort of pump stuff in infinitely. Now we've got those fluid extraction pipes, which should do the job for us. So if we do a search for fluid, here we go. We've got an extraction cable, and we just need some of the fluid pipes. So if we put the extraction cable on top of the water source, that's probably not where we want it though. I'm going to be a little tricky with this one and actually put down a fake block first. Put that down there, because what I actually want this extraction cable to do is to point downwards into the water. So if I remove that cobblestone now, we've got now that fluid extraction cable sitting over an infinite water source. It's not pumping anything out of it just yet because we haven't actually connected it to anything. But as soon as I connect it to that hydrator, it's going to start perpetually pumping water out of that until it's full. So there we go. And you'll see, there we go. There's that water pumping straight out of that infinite supply. And it's going into the hydrator now. So if we look at the hydrator, we can see that that's now full up. That'll continue pumping because there is a bit of a buffer in the pipe itself. But that's pretty much ready to go as soon as we add power. So it is time to make our power nodes. Let's go back to that recipe. We want our energy transfer nodes. We need our nether bricks, which we've just been creating up here. So let's grab those. Go back to that furnace. 15, 16 should be enough. Yep, there we go. Let's grab the rest of that terracotta while we're at it, and we can put that in storage for later. And now we've got our nether bricks, which again we can just put in storage because we're going to craft from that immediately. All right, so energy transfer node. Do we have everything we need for that now? I think we do. Yeah, we do. All right. So I'm going to make 2 of these, and we need some more of those GPSs as well, because we're going to need to tell it where it's going to point to. So we actually have a bunch of them in our inventory. So we've got 3 machines. I'm just going to take 3 of those. That should be all we need for now. Okay, so in order to power up all 3 of these machines, what we're going to do is we're going to take those GPS markers and we're going to assign each one of them to one of those machines' locations. So this one will point at the hydrator, this one will point at the dehydrator, and this one will point at the manufactory. And then all we need to do is go back over to where those geothermal power generators are, and we're going to chuck down a energy transfer node on top of one of them. We'll just use one for now, we don't need to use the other one. And then we're going to feed all 3 of those GPS markers into it. Alright, so there we go, 1, 2, 3. Now you can see that that is now sending power straight through to those devices. In fact, it's sending a lot of power straight through to those devices, which means that we need to up the transfer rate, I think. And that should hopefully fill back up again in a minute. Did we turn those off? No, I don't think we did. Is that still firing? Requires redstone? That should start firing again and filling up those cables once more. Actually, just to play it safe now, I'm just going to put the second one on. We'll see about our energy usage in a minute. We actually might need to split these up between the 2. And just up that a little bit. All right, we'll be able to see for sure once we go back over the other side, because we will have a bit of an idea as to how much energy is being stored in the devices themselves, and work out exactly how much more they need, if anything. So Manufactory is full. That's got heaps. We haven't started using it yet. The dehydrator is not quite full yet, but it is filling up, so that's a good sign. And the hydrator is partly full, but not full up all the way. So I suspect that maybe once the dehydrator is full up, it'll actually start filling up the hydrator, and then we'll get that energy buffer going back into the geothermal generator itself. The Manufactory hasn't actually taken that much. It's only got taken 48,000, so that one's pretty much ready to go. So we can now use the Manufactory to actually make some of those metals that we were talking about before. So I'm just going to use it with some iron ingots first up, because I know that we actually need these to create our iron mud buckets. So let's go there. I'm going to just chuck in a couple of iron ingots, and that Manufactory now will actually go through. We can actually click on that to show recipes too. So these are all the different devices, all the different resources we can run through it. So we've got crushed diamond, we've got crushed rhodochrosite. I've never actually used that before. Crushed quartz, we've got the prismarine, we've got boron, all sorts of crazy stuff that we haven't even encountered yet. So uranium dust, you can crush cottonwood amber into white wool. So if you want a quick way of making wool, you can do that. the acorns into string. Pulverize iron, this is the one we're making right now. So pulverized iron is actually, there we go, that's actually required to make the iron mud buckets. So if we search for mud and look at the recipe for that iron mud bucket, where is it? Iron bars? No, iron is what we want. Around here somewhere. Hunting. Iron. Where are we? It's not even in alphabetical order. There we go. Iron mud bucket. There we go. So pulverized iron is one of the things that we need for that recipe. So now we can create our iron mud bucket and go and create a bunch of iron resource hogs. So that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. All right. Now, as we are now working a bit with fluids, something else that we might want to actually muck around with is creating a fluid tank. So I could actually, between the two of these things here, actually insert a fluid tank, and that would fill up with whatever sort of we're pumping out of there using the fluid extraction cable, and actually show the levels sort of going into that hydrator. Or I could just feed the hydrator directly from the tank. That's another thing we could totally do. So, but I'm just going to make one just because at the moment, because I think it's high time that we actually built a fluid tank. So, all right, let's go for fluid tank and see what our options are. So I think there's a few of these. Or what have we got? Fluid tank. Yeah, here we go. There's a few different ones. So we have a chiseled fluid bit tank. We've got fluid storage tank from Cyclic. I actually like these basic fluid tanks because these ones we can actually upgrade to different sizes that have much higher capacity for the amount of fluid that they can take. So I'm going to craft one of these basic fluid tanks, which just requires redstone and iron ingots. That's pretty straightforward. And if I wanted to upgrade to these other ones, we actually take the one beforehand, and then we actually put other things around it. So we're not quite up there with making these enriched alloys yet, but we will be eventually. So let's start with this model of tank, and we can actually play around with that at a later time. I might chuck this one down just over here for now, and we can play around with that later. So let's fill that up with some water just so we can demonstrate how it works. So if we grab some water, chuck it in the fluid tank, pretty straightforward. These marks down the side give us a visual indicator of how much fluid is in the tank, which is really, really cool. So yeah, there's some basic machinery using redstone flux. Okay, so I've just had a brainwave, and one thing that I mentioned before was that at some point we're going to need some sponge. So the reason why that is because when it comes down to our other nodes, so we've built our item transfer node and our energy transfer node now, we're going to want a fluid transfer node at some point, and sponge is actually part of the recipe for that. So that's why eventually we're actually going to need some sponge. But we can create that sponge now, actually, because we have pretty much everything we need for it. I have just set this up for one more machine, so I've just moved the fluid extraction cable and the fluid cables around the back to cater for two machines. And this is a good demo. I've got a redstone torch in my hand right now. This is a good demonstration of what I was talking about before, where you could use a redstone torch to actually stop a fluid cable or one of the cables from actually going in a particular direction. So I don't want it going twice into that machine there. So there we go. It's connected on one side, not the other side. So I've just used that to toggle that connection, which is super useful. So, all right, now, in order to get the other thing we need for this, what we actually need to build is a solidifier. So it's another machine just like the hydrator that actually requires water, but this one actually takes fluids and basically changes them into items. So do a hunt for that again on JEI. So Solidifier, it's this one here, again from the Cyclic mod. For this one, we need lily pads and glowstone dust and a block of iron. So lily pads, how do we get that? I actually can't remember. So we need vines, grass, seeds, and cactus. Okay. I don't know if we've got all of that, but we can probably get it. So grass, vines, cactus, and seeds. Okay, so getting vines and cactus is pretty straightforward. We've got the seeds already. Grass we can create using bone meal, so I think we can do that. So grab ourselves some bone meal. There we go. Grab ourselves our shears, which I think we're going to need to get that. So I know we had some shears from before. All right, let's grab ourselves some grass and cactus at the same time, because we've certainly got no shortage of cactus. So if we, oh God, this whole thing's going to come down. There we go, raining cactus. Okay, So we've got more cactus than we'll ever need. Yep, that's plenty. And we're just going to use this grassy patch to grow some grass. There we go. And use our shears to get that grass. There we go, a little bit of grass. Occasionally you need weird stuff like that in recipes, so... Oh, our shears just broke too. Good timing. Okay. So we've got our grass, we've got a cactus. What else did we need? We need some seeds, and there was one other thing. So... what was it? No, Solidifier. Solidifier, we also needed, for the lily pads, we needed vines. Okay. So for vines, we can probably use our new machines to get that going, actually. So we want some jungle saplings, I believe, that we can actually create those into vines. So do a search for jungle. There we go. Stack of jungle saplings. If we put those in the dehydrator... No, that's sticks. That's the wrong one. So we don't need that. We need... Was it the hydrator? Surely not. No. Maybe we actually do need the... Hang on a second. I'm pretty sure this works. We just need to put 4 of them in there. No. Show recipes. So, for vines. I'm sure there's a recipe for vines here. There we go. It is a jungle sapling. So, we can just make it do that recipe instead. So... if we put the jungle saplings in, why is that not working? No? Can you toggle the recipe? Surely we can toggle the recipe. So jungle sapling to stick is one of the recipes, but there's actually the recipe for the jungle sapling to that as well. No, it doesn't seem to want to be working at the moment though. No, it's not liking it. Right, so it turns out it's not just me. It's actually a bug at the moment. It's a known bug. It's been reported. Hopefully it'll be fixed in an update soon. But, I mean, getting vines out of the dehydrator, not the biggest concern. We can still get the vines the old-fashioned way. So, dehydrator should still work for just about everything else we want to do it with. Just not vines from jungle saplings, which is a bit annoying, but it is what it is. Okay. So, anyway, now we will go back to making that solidifier. So, we should have what we want for the lily pads now. So let's make a couple of those. Where are we? Vines, that, and cacti was the last bit. What do we do with all our cacti? I'm sure we had it. Cacti. Cactus. There we go. We've got a bunch of that. And seeds and grass and vines. Is that right? So why is that not making the lily pads? Lily pads. Do a search for lily pads. Doing well today. Oh, it's in the hydrator, of course. Okay. So we need to put those materials through the hydrator to create lily pads. All right. Well, fortunately, we have one of those. So let's click our recipes and go to lily pads. Where are we? There we go. That's the one we want. So if we go cacti, grass, vines, and then seeds, we should be right. So let's just turn that off for a second. So vines, get all the other materials we had. So seeds, cacti, grass. We'll just do a quick test run because that'll give us 2. And that's pretty much all we need for now. So there we go. Lock the recipe. And that is out of power for some odd reason. That's got heaps of power. That's got heaps of power. So why is that out of power? Oh no, of course, because I turned it off. Duh. There we go. All right, so that's always on. Hopefully receiving power. Not receiving power. All right, quickly troubleshoot that. For some reason, it's not getting power. Occasionally these things will happen and you just have to go back to the source of the power, check your GPS coordinates, make sure that everything's firing as it should be. So this thing has heaps of power, this thing has heaps of power. GPS is working. That is going into the dehydrator. So it should be working. Oh no, of course, because I moved the dehydrator. That will be why. So that's it. I mean, this is a good lesson. If you ever need to move a machine block that you've got set up to receive wireless power, it's going to break the connection. So it's going to break where the GPS is pointing to, and you need to redo that part of the arrangement. So Simple as just going back up to the machine, changing the coordinates that the GPS is using to point to it, and going and chucking that back in the node. And as soon as we put that straight back in, that's going to get a bunch of power, and that should spit out a couple of lily pads for us because all of the right materials are in there now. So there we go. I could see immediately that was sending power somewhere, so that can only be to our friend, Mr. Hydrator. So if we head back over there now, I reckon we're going to find a couple of lily pads. Or not. What's going on? Is that going to work? Maybe just one of each? We got something in the wrong spot. What is going on here? Do we need to select the recipe? Maybe we need to select the recipe. So let's go back to the... Where are we? Lily pads. It's definitely one of these. Well, there we go. So lily pad. Yep. There we go. All right. It has made our lily pads. Fantastic. And now if we go back to our solidifier, we should have everything we need for that now. So glowstone dust, we might need to grind down some glowstone dust. We might need to make an observer. So yep, we've got that. Glowstone dust we can do easily because we've got plenty of glowstone. Or glowstone materials at the very least, so we can make a bunch of glowstone. And then get the glowstone dust out of that. So that's pretty straightforward. Yep. And then our solidifier is ready. There we go. And chuck our solidifier down. We have fluid feeding into it immediately through this pipe that I set up earlier. And this one I don't think needs redstone, so this one's all ready to go. So now what we can do is actually create some sponge here and now. So just quickly look up the recipe for sponge. This is not a terribly complicated one once you've got these machines going, but you do need to have a couple of these machines ready. So now sponge, basic sponge, we can actually create using a hydrator, using dirt and ice. Now dirt's easy of course, but ice is the tricky one. But in order to make ice, we can actually make ice in the solidifier using sticks. So those sticks that we got out of the jungle sapling before, strangely enough, are actually not going to be wasted because we can put those in the solidifier and that's actually going to create ice for us. So I imagine sticks are a weird thing. I imagine it's almost like creating an icy pole on the end of a stick. Who knows? It's something a bit weird like that. That's going to chew through our fluid resource, which of course is perpetually refilling, and that's going to make ice for us. So now that we've got that ice, we can grab ourselves some dirt. So just grab that from our stores. So we've got some dirt blocks. And now if we go to the hydrator, we should actually be able to create sponge. Fantastic. We've got ourselves a block of sponge. So not that tough as it turns out after all. So that's it. We've gone through a few machines today. We've got the hydrator, the solidifier, we've got the dehydrator, and we've got the manufactory. Now, the manufactory, I dare say, is going to prove to be the most useful one in the short term because we're going to be getting a bunch of our ingots and we're going to be turning them into the pulverized versions of those metals so that we can start creating those mud buckets and getting our additional resource hogs. The more hogs we've got, the more these metals are going to be easy to craft out of truffles, the easier everything's going to be. So it's a fantastic way to sort of shore up all of the gaps in our resources, and that'll continue to go with that new redstone power that we've got on tap now. So that's it. That's it for this episode. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Hopefully you can have a bit of fun tinkering around with those machines yourself. Make sure you've got that power set up first, otherwise you're going to find that a lot of them are running on empty. But otherwise, have fun. That's all for me for this episode. My name's Luke. Thanks for watching. Make sure you do all the usual. So subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications bell, check out all of our stuff on the hub at channelengame.com. I'll be back for more in a very short time, but until then, enjoy your digging and we'll see you for the next episode.